Meanwhile, also this week, Environment Minister John Cortes lashed out at opposition leader Daniel Feetham, saying he lies without compunction and accusing him of dragging his party down with him. This is in response to the GST's criticism of the new fishing and diving regulations. The opposition said the government continues to act like rabbits caught in the headlights over the issue of fishing with nets in British Gibraltar territorial waters.
The GST says it's surprising that the government has published marine regulations and chosen to ignore the issue of fishing with nets. It describes the present situation as unsustainable, with a ban against fishing with nets only being enforced against locals and not Spanish fishermen. The opposition leader asked whether government will require Spanish fishermen to come to Gibraltar to apply for a licence to fish with nets, or will the cofradías be allowed to send a list of names of the vessels involved, with these automatically deemed to be licensed locally. Despite the long-awaited publication of the regulations, Daniel Feetham says these questions remain unanswered and concludes by asking, where is the rule of law now? Responding to these accusations, the GSLP Liberals say it was the GST that totally failed to address the situation in all its years in government. In his statement, the Environment Minister highlights that independent bodies such as the GFSA have recognised the government's protection of marine life, whilst allowing legitimate activities such as rod and line fishing to continue. John Cortes says for the first time ever, a statutory working group of stakeholders has been created to discuss and further improve the use and protection of Gibraltar's marine resources, a key element in developing policies and laws in the future as and when the time is right. The assumption that Spanish fishing vessels are fishing more than ever before is an outright lie, he says. Dr. Cortes believes the only one caught in headlights is the leader of the opposition, who doesn't know which way to turn in trying to create problems for Gibraltar for his own narrow personal ends.
And the Federation of Sea Anglers welcomed the introduction of the Marine Protection Regulations and the Tuna Preservation Regulations. It said it's a tenacious and bold move by the government, given that there have been so many competing interests to take into account. Christine Vasquez asked Federation Chairman Mario Ramos what it is about the regulations that they'd like the public to welcome.
Well, the whole issue, because we've been fighting for this for the last 20 years, and it's about time that they got, made law. Because before, we used to say it's a free-for-all, and by that we meant that anybody could take anything they wanted out of the sea. And there was no kind of regulations. You could catch undersized fish, you could take whatever you wanted, and there was no kind of regulations. Now, at least with all these regulations, at least we can protect our marine environment.
Welcome back. A local firefighter accused of stabbing a colleague was found this week not guilty. Eligio Porter had already been acquitted of wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. At the Supreme Court, a jury of 9 delivered a unanimous not guilty verdict on the charge of wounding. Since December 2012, the firefighter has been interdicted on full pay. His future in the fire brigade remains unclear. Speaking to GBC, Mr. Porter said he is thankful that these 2 long years are finally over and that justice has been served. The Chief Minister has written to Keith Vaz MP following comments made by him in Parliament that profits from the drugs trade enter the financial system through areas such as Gibraltar. Fabian Picardo tells Mr. Vaz that he is quite frankly outraged by his statements.
In his letter, the Chief Minister says members of Parliament, the press, television viewers and readers of Hansard have, without any factual basis, been given the erroneous impression that Gibraltar is a gateway for sums, possibly colossal amounts, since he's referred to 380 billion, of illegal proceeds into the world's financial system. Fabian Picardo tells Keith Vaz it's the first time he's ever heard such ill-informed suggestion, let alone in Parliament in the UK. He adds the potential impact of the statement is compounded by the fact that Mr. Vaz once, briefly, had ministerial responsibility for Gibraltar, and people may be led to believe that he was privy to official information or briefings that led him to say what he did. Mr. Picardo asks that the record be corrected and the damage rectified. In his letter, the Chief Minister says Mr Vaz cannot imagine the distress his throwaway remarks have caused him, the government of Gibraltar, and the fiercely loyal people of Gibraltar. The jurisdiction, he adds, has bent over backwards to prove it doesn't tolerate any abuse of its financial system. And because of its size, any slur on Gibraltar's reputation is magnified and can have a devastating negative effect, despite the fact there is no substance to the allegations or innuendo. But Mr Picardo concludes, should Mr Vaz have any evidence to support his statement, he should submit such evidence to the Royal Gibraltar Police immediately, so proper and appropriate action can be taken.
Work on the northern defences will start in a few weeks in preparation for its future refurbishment. The government has not yet committed to actual plans, but aim to restore the area to a world-class site. It says it will be an expensive undertaking, but certainly a worthy investment.
With a history combining over 1,000 years, the site is described as having huge potential. Although not yet committing to actual plans, government says it's moving along with the project, working with one of the parties that has expressed an interest. Ultimately, it aims to provide a refurbished area highlighting its history and heritage, whilst also catering to the tourism and leisure industries.
I think we can certainly open a world-class tourist attraction. This will take time, and this is not going to happen overnight. It will take a considerable amount of resources, of intergovernmental cooperation at the level of government departments, and it would also take a considerable amount of funding. So obviously this will be funded over a number of years. We intend to start clearing works in a part of the site pretty soon. I mean, this will happen in the next few weeks, and it will continue throughout this financial year, and then we will see the level of funding we can receive for next year. But certainly I think if we take a phased approach and we do this in a slow and orderly manner, we'll be able to open parts of the site as we progress.
And what type of investment could we be talking about exactly?
Well, we haven't costed the full project yet because we're working in phases. But certainly, it's going to be an expensive project, but we see it as an investment. For example, the cruise lines are calling for new tours all the time. We have the possibility of opening the site up, a fortifications tour, including World War II tunnels, including the northern defences, which have a medieval element to them as well. They have an early modern element as well. Part of the Prince's Lines was ended in around 1790. We have a World War II searchlight post as well. So there is an extraordinary combination of history on that particular site, and certainly the idea of opening it up to tourists, opening part of it for recreational use for the local community, because it is linked to Moorish Castle estates in one particular area, and it's also linked to the Cratchit's Ramp area as well. And as I said, there's the idea of connecting it to casemates. So certainly we can do something there which has value from a tourist point of view, but also from a recreational and leisure point of view.
Spanning from Forbes Quarry to the Moorish Castle, the area in question is vast and includes tunnels and chambers. Its location and size make the northern defences a challenging site to access and work on. So what are the main issues being considered?
I think one issue is going to be access. It's obvious. We went on a site visit recently, and it's obvious that the access will be a problem. But I think we've managed to identify ways in which to deal with that. Initially, there will need to be a considerable amount of clearing out of rubbish, of debris, of essentially things that people have just discarded all over the place. There needs to be some cleaning done. There needs to be some restoring done, and certainly plenty of work. Like I said, it's a huge area, so this will need to be phased in. So we intend to do that. We intend to tackle it through a phased approach, starting with one part of the site and moving on to other parts, and opening up parts of that as we go along.
The clearing of the area will start in a few weeks, with government saying they'll have a clearer picture in December as to how they'll proceed. It says the process is one which will take considerable time, taking into account the nature of the site and its size, dimensions and importance.
The Development and Planning Commission have announced an application for a new building to be built next to Euro Towers. The new building will have 2 commercial levels, these being the ground and first floor. Above this, there will be 10 levels of residential accommodation. AKS Architects and Engineers Limited have applied to the DPC for the planning permission. Any representations about the application should be submitted to the DPC within the next 21 days. And also this week, the viewpoint controversy continued with the government, the opposition and GBC all having their say. The GSD accused the Chief Minister of interfering with the freedom of the press and condemns the corporation's senior management or its board for allowing it. This followed the decision by GBC to withdraw invitations to representatives of the government and opposition for last week's viewpoint debate as a result of a difference of interpretation of the regulatory authority's code of due impartiality, due accuracy and undue prominence. The GSC says it finds it unacceptable that Fabian Picardo should try and manipulate GBC through the officers of the GRA. For its part, the government said the opposition's comments on the issue show they do not know what they're talking about. The government says that under current rules, GBC is bound to implement the regulatory authority's code on due accuracy, due impartiality and due prominence when assembling a panel for debate that includes political representation. In a statement, Number 6 says it is incredible that the GSD should behave as if they were not aware of this, given the authority recently invited comments on that same code from all political parties. And GBC restated the circumstances that led to the last-minute withdrawal of invitations. It says it took the decision because it was unable at the time to secure from the GRA clear advice on whether the likely composition of the panel would be in breach of the code of due impartiality, due accuracy and undue prominence. GBC points out that failure to comply with the code could potentially result in a substantial fine. The corporation is nonetheless pleased that the GBC board and the GRA are now discussing a way forward, with a view to obtaining clarity on the interpretation of the code. However, it says that placed in such an invidious position last Thursday, it had no choice but to withdraw the invitations in order to ensure it did not fall foul of the GRA's code. GBC therefore rejects any suggestion that it hung its staff out to dry or that it took this decision to assist the GSD or because it did not like the GRA's ruling, adding that it takes its obligations on impartiality extremely seriously. That's all for News Review. For more, you can head over to our website gbc.gi/news. And you can find us on Twitter and Facebook as well. Thank you very much for watching. From the team, good night.